Hi there and welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire and I hope you're having a good week. Today I am sharing some more tips for using stamp layering stamp sets. Now I have shared in previous videos many methods for lining up the images in stamp layering stamp sets. And I think what works best for everyone is different. So I have another method to show you today. This is one that I've used in make and takes at craft shows in the past, and it really is a great method if you plan to do a lot of stamping with your stamp layering. Now, when you see me set this method up, you might think that I've lost it completely because it looks elaborate, but I promise it really isn't. And you may have seen techniques like this in other videos too, but I'm hoping that this works for some of you out there who are like me, who like to do stamp layering and like to make a bunch of cards at once. This will really be helpful for you. Now for this method of stamp layering, you need any stamps that you have the coordinating dies for, any stamp layering sets. I'm using the Altenew Build a Flower sets today because the stamp set and the coordinating dies come together, and I have a few different options I'll show you. Now this first one, what I like about it is the die actually cuts the image out right up against the edge. There's no white trim with this. There are a few Altenew Build a Flower stamp and die sets that have this feature, and I'll show you another one a little bit later. But you can use any that cut a white trim, that's fine for this technique too, which I'll also show you. I've used this stamp set before and I really, really like it. I think it's beautiful. Let's start with the stamping of the flowers in this set. There are 2 different size flowers, and each of those flowers have 3 layers to it. So I'm going to set up my template for my MISTI stamping tool. You need some sort of stamping tool for this technique. Here I have a piece of cardstock that is 8.5 by 6, and this will be my template that I put into my stamping tool. I have 2 size flowers, and remember there are 3 layers to each. So I'll cut 3 holes for each of those flowers. So here is my template. I have 3 large flowers die cut on the left and 3 of the smaller flowers die cut on the right. And I wrote down light, medium, and dark next to each of those flowers. That will just help me when I do my inking, but you don't have to do that. I usually make my templates like this out of white cardstock. You can even laminate them first if you want to, but I decided to use black cardstock in the video today just so you could see it better. Here I have flipped my template over and I'm putting a small piece of sticky tape on the back of it, just towards the bottom of the die cut. This will help to hold the die cuts in place a little bit while we do our stamping. You don't want to cover the entire back of it because it would be hard to get the die cuts out. Just a little on the bottom will be fine. Once you make this template, you never have to do it again. You can keep it stored with your stamps and it'll be ready to go. Okay, so now I'm popping this into my MISTI and I'm using some more tape to tape this in place so it doesn't move around in my MISTI. I just find the magnet gets in the way for this. You don't need it. Instead, just tape it down since we'll be using it so much. Okay, so now we're ready to do our stamping, but we need to set up our stamps. I'll start up there at the top and put some white die cuts in to the top openings. I have cut a huge pile of white cardstock flowers in these 2 sizes, which are ready to go and do lots of stamping. So I'm positioning the first image, the most solid image from the set, right over the openings. Now remember, in this case, the stamp goes right up to the edge of the die cut, which is unusual for stamp layering, but you could line up whatever image you have right with that white die cut. Here I'm inking this up with the lightest ink because that's what it says there. It says light. And then I will stamp that very firmly. So that's the first layer of our flower stamped with the lightest ink. Now I'll take that die cut out and slide it down to the next spot. All we're doing here is setting up the stamps into the MISTI so we can do a bunch of stamping. So this is the second image, the one with a little bit less area to it. I'm lining up the large flower and the medium flower. Close the MISTI door onto that. Now that's positioned perfect. And we can stamp this with a medium color ink. And you can see once we have this set up, we can just go to town doing a lot of stamping of die cuts. And notice I'm doing 2 flowers at once. You could do 1 flower at a time if you want to. You would just have 1 column, but it saves time to do 2 flowers at once, or even 3 if they're smaller. Okay, so now I've moved my die cuts down to the bottom position. This will be for the darkest ink and the smallest layering image, the center of the flower here. So I'm lining up the center of the flowers, transferred them to the door of my MISTI, and now I can stamp this with my darkest ink. And check it out, we have our setup here to do lots of stamp layering, and we can go to town. So let me show you how this is done. I just pop a die cut into each of the openings. So we're going to create 6 flowers at once. And remember, I put a little bit of sticky tape on the back of the openings so they're holding the die cuts in place for me. You don't have to do that, but I find it's helpful. Okay, the top row we're inking up with the lightest ink. The second row, we're going to ink up with a medium shade of ink. And then the third row, we'll ink up with the darkest shade of ink. Then we can close the door on our MISTI, and we have 6 flowers started. All we have to do is swap positions and keep stamping. So I take the bottom ones and I'll move them to the top. Then I'll shift the others down a row. And once we have them all in position, we repeat that and stamp the light ink at the top, the medium ink in the middle, and then the dark ink at the bottom. So you can see you can kind of get into a rhythm with this. And we'll do this 3 times and we'll have 6 flowers made very quickly. Okay, now it's time for the last stamping. I'm moving the bottom ones to the top, moving the others down a notch, and then repeat this. Light ink at the top row, medium ink in the middle row, and dark ink on the bottom. Now you can use any inks for this. I'm using Altenew Inks simply because they are beautiful colors and they have combinations of light, medium, dark, and extra dark inks that you can use together to take the guesswork out. Ink cubes work great for this method. So now I can take my 6 flowers out and they're ready to add to a card. And I can grab more white die cuts to pop into place and continue with more stamping. So the setup of this does take some time, but you can keep the template even with the sticky tape on it. You can reuse that tape over and over again. You can keep your template with your stamp set so that it saves time in the future when you want to make more stamped images with the same sets. So here you can see I'm using purple ink. Every time you just shift all the flowers down and you ink it up the same as before. It's really a fun method, especially for those of you that are math-minded like me or who'd love to mass produce. I know a lot of teachers like to do different methods like this at make and takes, so you can make a bunch of flowers or images at once, and it really is helpful. Okay, now it's time to do the leaves for this stamp set. There are 2 leaves that each have 2 layers. Now you'll notice I die cut 3 rows. Ignore that bottom row, pretend it's not there. I thought there were 3 layers to this flower. I got confused, so I'm only doing the first 2 rows. So again, I have 2 size leaves that each have 2 layers. So I'm putting my little die cuts into the template and I'm lining up my images. So I've got my most solid images in the top row and then the layer for them on the second row. And then I'm ready to go. I use the light inks in the top row, medium ink in the second row, stamp those, swap positions between the 2 rows, and do the stamping again. And in no time, I have 4 leaves with the stamp layering. Okay, so these examples that I've showed you are unique stamps where the stamp stamps right up to the edge of the die cut. There's no white trim. But I wanted to show you that you can do this method with traditional stamp and die sets where there is a white trim left around the edge. So this one I'm using 2 different stamp sets at the same time to create that large and small flower. The first stamp set is the Altenew Build-A-Flower Gardenia stamp set with the coordinating dies. They are sold together. And I'll use the 3 layers of this large flower. There is a 4th layer, but at this point I didn't think I was going to use it. I'm also using an older stamp set, the Altenew Remember This stamp set, and the coordinating dies. Those are sold separately in this case. And I'm just going to do the flower from this. I thought it worked nicely with the other one. And that I'm using 3 layers again. So on the left side of the template that I've created, I die cut 3 large flowers for the 3 layers of this gardenia. Then on the right side of the template, I die cut 3 small flowers for the 3 layers of this Remember This flower. So I have a template ready to stamp 2 different flowers, all 3 layers. I also put tape on the back of the openings just to hold the die cuts in place. And remember, you can keep this template for future use. So I have the template taped into my MISTI and ready to go. So let's position the stamps. I'm putting white die cuts in the first row, and I'll start with the most solid image first. Now remember, with this stamp and die set, the stamp is a little bit smaller than the die cut. So I am just centering the stamp on the die cut, looking from the sides to make sure there's a little trim of the die cut showing on all sides of the stamp. Then I close my MISTI door onto the stamps, and that first layer is ready. So I'll stamp this with my lightest ink. This is such a beautiful set of Altenew colors. This is Dewdrop, and I'll stamp that, and you can see the white trim around the edge. Now I'll move this down to the second spot so we can line up the second layer image. I look at the key on the Altenew stamp set package to see how to line it up perfectly, like what spots to line up. And then I make sure by looking from the sides of the stamp that I have the edges lined up where they need to be. Close the MISTI door, and then I can stamp this with a medium shade of ink. I really do recommend looking at the layering keys that Altenew provides. It really helps in seeing how to position each layer. So now we're on to the bottom row. This is the layering image with the least amount of area on it. These are pretty easy to line up. There are little edges that are easy to line up on the stamps with the stamp image you already created, and you just look from the sides to make sure they're lined up okay. So now I have my flowers ready to go. They're all positioned perfectly, and I can go ahead and do my stamping. Light at the top, medium in the middle, and dark at the bottom. This time I'm using some yellow colors. You got to put a lot of muscle into this one since there are so many images in the stamping tool. Once you're done, move all of the images down a row, and then we'll do our second round of stamping. So you can see for this that you get beautiful results even if you have a white trim to your stamp set. You can still make a template and just line up your images as you normally would. The best part about this is the die cutting's done already for you, and your stamps are perfectly positioned on the die cut. So I stamped a bunch of flowers, and then I decided that I did want to use the 4th layer, the outline layer of these stamps. So I took the top row of stamps out of my MISTI, and I'm putting in that 4th layer. So I'm going to have to stamp these each individually, and that's okay. I wasn't sure I wanted to do the 4th layer, and it didn't fit in the MISTI anyways. But now I can quickly go and add that outline layer, that 4th layer, to each of the die cuts. So you can see this really does save you a lot of time, and you end up with beautiful layering and die cutting each time. Now before I show you how to turn these all into cards, I had one more example of creating a template that I wanted to show you because it's a little different. This time I'm using the Altenew Build-A-Flower Peony Blossom set. Now this is another unique stamp and die combo where the die cuts the image out right up against the edge without leaving a white trim. Now in this set I have 3 different size flowers I want to stamp at the same time, but only 2 layers to each. So I'm going to set up my template a little bit different. So I cut the template by doing 2 of each of the 3 flowers. The 2 large flowers at the top, the medium flowers are in the middle, and the small flowers in the bottom, because this is how it fit best into my MISTI. So in this case, I put this solid area in the left column, and I'll ink up the left column of flowers with my lightest ink. So I went ahead and I lined up all my stamps. Here I'm stamping the lightest over on the left-hand column. And then on the right-hand column, I'm stamping the medium ink. Again, I did this because I had 3 different size flowers with only 2 layers each. So it's a little bit different than the options I showed you before, but I wanted to show you can make this work in whatever stamp set that you may have. So this time I'm switching the positions, moving the flowers in the left to the right side and the ones in the right to the left side. And then I'll do the stamping again with the light ink on the left side and the medium ink on the right side. And there we have our 6 flowers, 2 layers to each. Now there is a center image for these flowers that I did stamp, but I didn't use a stamping tool for those because they're very easy to stamp right at the center. But I'm able to quickly make a bunch of flowers at once. Okay, so now that I have a huge pile of flowers, I wanted to show you how I inked the edges of the ones where there is no white trim on the die cut. So these are the ones where the stamping goes right up to the edge. I feel adding ink to the edge gives the look of dimension. But using a bigger ink blending tool was difficult to get into those deep cuts on these particular flowers. So I decided to use the new Ranger detail blending tools. These have a small foam piece on both ends, and these are brand new. They won't be available in stores until the beginning of March, I believe, but you can pre-order them, and I'll provide a link below. I've went ahead and pre-ordered a bunch more. Ranger sent me these to try, and they really are great. I'll use one foam for each color. So maybe this one will have pink on one end, red on the other, and I'll just use these for all of my inks. But you can see how it's easy to get into those tight spaces and put a little bit of ink on the edge of the flowers. Now this takes a little bit of time on all of these flowers, but it's definitely worth the effort when you see the look of dimension that you get from it. So you can use any inking tool for this, but that tiny one really is helpful. And there you can see the one on the left is not inked, and the one on the right is, and it really makes a big difference. Now that I have all of my flowers ready, I wanted to show you how I added these to cards, and I kept the cards very simple from here on out. Now I wanted a tone-on-tone, white-on-white background, so I die cut from white cardstock the Altenew Spring Shower Cover Die. I really love this die, and I've used it in videos before, and I'm using liquid adhesive, just little dots here and there, to add it onto a white note card. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So we get this white textured look to the background. Adds a little bit of interest, but isn't too distracting. Now for these flowers, I decided to kind of curl the petals on them. So I'm just kind of rounding them around my finger. And I'll use 2 different adhesives to glue these down so that I keep some of this dimension even after it goes in an envelope. First, I put some of the strong liquid adhesive just at the center of the flowers and adhere them to the card where I want by pressing my finger down in the center. And then I'll let that dry for a bit. In the meantime, I'm using liquid adhesive to add some leaves behind them. I can just tuck them in. Any adhesive would work for this. While that dries, I'll go ahead and create my sentiment. This is black cardstock that already has Stick It double-sided adhesive on the back. That way, when I die cut with this Hello die, the adhesive is already there. This Hello die cut is from the Altenew Flower Arrangement die set. Okay, now that the center of our flowers are dried, they're glued to the card, I'm going to pull each petal back, put a foam square underneath the petal right in the middle behind it, and then a little liquid adhesive on the tip of the petal. This will keep that dimension where it's raised a little bit in the center of each petal. This takes a little bit of time, but it really does add a lot to the card. And I would send this card in a padded envelope just to keep it safe. But you can see how these beautiful flowers have a lot of dimension thanks to adding that little foam square under each petal. Okay, next I'm going to add 1 large gem to the center of each of the flowers. I'm using Lucy's Cards Jewels. I always use her rainbow pack that has 3 different sizes. But here I'm also using the new chunky size. These are larger jewels in the different colors. And I thought that large jewel worked perfect in the center of the flowers. Next, I wanted to show how these flowers came together. These flowers are cool because the die actually creates a score line down the center of each petal. So I'm folding each petal in half just to add that dimension. And then I'm going to add these to the cards. To add these to the card, all I did was put a really large glob of strong liquid adhesive on the center of each of these flowers. By doing that large drop of adhesive, you're actually helping to keep the shape of these flowers because it'll dry firm and really help to keep that dimension. And that's the only adhesive I used on the back of them. Next, I'm adding the little leaves behind each and then a jewel to the center. So you can see after you have these flowers created, they come together very easily on a card. To add more detail to this, I decided to create little branches using the Altenew Create a Wreath die set. This has lots of different branches and leaves in it. I just took this simple branch, die cut it from craft cardstock, decided that was a little too light, so I'm inking up the branches with a Tonic blending sponge and some mocha ink from Altenew. And I tucked those underneath some of the leaves and flowers and added a simple sentiment. This sentiment is an older one from Altenew. It's from the Hello Sunshine stamp set. Okay, so I want to show you all the cards that I created so that I can give you a few more ideas on using these flowers. Now this one is just like the one I showed you, but I did a vertical orientation instead. On several of my cards, I use the sentiment that says, "We rise by lifting others." This is one of my favorite sayings. In fact, I have it on a print that hangs in my house. And I'm going to send these cards to some inspiring fellow crafters. Now this sentiment is from the Altenew Build-A-Flower Gardenia set. And I thought it was a perfect size strip to add to some of these cards. Since this method of stamping allowed me to make a bunch of flowers at once, I decided to put several on this card. On this one, I adhered that little sentiment strip kind of floating on the flowers by putting strong liquid adhesive on the back. Now for this example, instead of using the stamped leaves, I created die cut leaves, and I used that Create a Wreath die set that I showed you earlier, that the twig die was from. And I inked those little green die cuts, and you can see you get a different look by using the die cut leaves instead of the stamp layered leaves. I honestly ran out of leaves, so I decided to switch up the die cut. The Blessed to Have You in My Life is from the Gardenia stamp set that I've used in this video. Now here I have a few cards using the same design, just different color flowers. That Hello die cut is from the Flower Arrangement die set from Altenew. And you can see how I added dimension behind the petals on each of these. I also like the look of these die cuts kind of clustered tight together. Thanks to the deep cut these dies create between the petals, you can really tuck them in nicely together. And by the way, I have photos of all these cards on my blog, so you can check out a closer look. Now for my blue flowers and my red flowers, I decided to skip the dimension to save some time, and I just glued the die cuts flat onto the card. And you can see that still looks lovely, so if you want to save time, you can not do the foam adhesive behind the petals and just glue them down with either a tape runner or liquid adhesive. This thank you die cut is also from the Altenew Flower Arrangement die set. I also like that you can layer these die cuts together to create a full flower. The one on the left, I just quickly added foam tape between. The one on the right, I kind of curled the petals with my finger first to give it more dimension. Now for the Gardenia flower, which is large with so much detail, I kept my card very simple. I just added it with foam tape and regular adhesive to the front of a white card, added gems, and then a simple sentiment. Here I used the two different flowers from the two different stamp sets together on one card. I like that the Altenew images can be used together from different sets. And I stamped the sentiment 3 times below it. I actually put the flowers too far up on the card, so by stamping 3 times, I filled in that extra space. Then my final card, very simple, glued the flower and leaves down flat onto the card, added the thank you die cut on top, and then a few gems. So there you have a way you can make a bunch of cards at once by using a fun stamp layering method. Now you can see I have lots of flowers and leaves left over, so Lila and I will be definitely making some more cards today. I appreciate you spending time with me. I link below to all of the supplies that I use, but go to my blog because I have photos of each of these cards, and I mentioned the inks that I used on each also. In the middle are a couple other videos you might like using similar products or methods. If you haven't done so, hit subscribe so you can see more videos, and I hope to see you again soon. Have a great week.